Hello, it's Philip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London. Looking at a very interesting book this morning from Waterside Press, Putting Justice into Words. They've done that here. It's a very difficult book in some ways. I know the area, I'm well aware of what happened, I can remember it very well. It's the killing of Constable Keith Blakelock, the Broadwater Farm Riot, Broadwater Farm being an estate in Tottenham. This book has been written by Tony Moore and it has a foreword by Clive Emsley. And the title of the book is What Took Place on the Broadwater Farm Estate, a New Appraisal 30 Years On. That's our title for the review we've written. Let me show you the book first. There it is. It's a paperback spine and there's a nice sort of quotes at the back, a picture of the author there. It runs to 300 pages. There's a little bit of publicity at the back about various books which they publish at Waterside. Then you've got a short index. What I like about this book is that there is a conclusion at the back. Blame and various other things. I'm not going to make any comments about who to blame and what happened, except that we do actually have this book, which is, I think, a very good statement on what happened. What I do like is the amount of footnoting. There's a lot of reference material. You can see it all in the body copy of the book itself. There are a range of subheadings. Obviously, Mr. Silcott and other people are mentioned. Silcott and various other people are mentioned. A lot of people. Then the actual killing itself, which is in chapter 8. Again, a lot of detail. And then if you go to the front of the book, you've got the main front part there. Then you've got the table of contents, and you can see it's detailed. He's gone into a great deal of detail with this particular book. It's in some ways a little bit like a report many years after the event. There are details about the author and then acknowledgements. Then there is a dedication to the memory of Constable Blakelock, which is, I think, a very important thing to put forward. Then there's a foreword there which sets up and sets out what has happened, and then there's a bit about Professor Emsley as well. Then we go into the book. You've got a drawing of the estate. If you've ever been there, you'll know what it looks like. And then you've got an introduction, and then we go straight into the book itself. As I say, it's a paperback. I found it very interesting to read because it throws up a couple of very important points which are directly relevant to our society today, 30 years later. The murder of a police officer will always remain one of the most serious of crimes within the law of homicide, with the revulsion felt by all serving officers and members of the public for this particularly heinous crime. You've got people who've decided to become police officers who are defending the Queen's peace, our right to go about our business, and they're in an immediate line of fire whenever there's any problem. It's not the same being in the armed forces, and I'm an ex-member of the armed forces. It's a different type of relationship with the community, because the community is there in existence and we all have to live together, especially if the community becomes more and more diverse. That's one of the lessons that's coming out of the book, which I'll talk about in a moment. The re-examination of the killing of Keith Blakelock on the 6th of October 1985, the re-examination is to be welcomed, I think, for two reasons. One, a thorough re-examination of the historic context of the crime 30 years on, and the continuing political issues between communities, and such issues, of course, have not gone away. If you want to call them black or coloured or whatever ethnic group you want, but they are communities, and London in particular now has a very, very wide range of different nationalities living in the capital of our country. We've therefore got to know how to police it, and the Met have got a particularly difficult job to do, and they do it brilliantly in my opinion. Waterside Press, therefore, are fast becoming, when they write these books, acknowledged leaders in the publishing field of important commentaries for applied criminologists, with their excellent motto of putting justice into words, which is what they've done with this book again. It's an important work, and one I've found touching and interesting to read. I mean, there will never be a conclusion in many ways to a lot of the issues that are thrown up but I do feel that it's a great contribution to our understanding and knowledge of where we are. The author, Tony Moore, has produced what is a well-researched and intelligent assessment of Blakelock's horrific murder by persons who have not yet been apprehended. I'm not going into any of the issues about who's been charged and what's happened. We're looking ahead now rather than back. Moore comes to his task, in our view, with the benefits of his detailed knowledge and experience gained from service with the Met. And Waterside Press have used this in turn to publish his first-class statement of what happened to Keith Blakelock and the aftermath, which is still with us, whether we like it or not. The greatest benefit of the book for us lies in the many lessons which continue to be learned from what was such a serious breakdown in community relationships. Yes, we will have similar events again, of course, so there is simply no point in turning away from some of the stark realities which still exist but which we can learn from for the future. The book will remain an excellent source material, I feel, for the applied criminologists for years to come, and we just hope some of the appalling actions some 30 years ago now will never be repeated. The question remains, have we actually learned anything from this? And we think the answer is that we probably have, but very slowly as we move forward to a more harmonious and better educated society. So the book, we think, will help both the professionals and the general public understand how far we still have to travel to achieve a social contract consensus between the state and its local diverse communities, as the UK's population and London's population in particular continues to expand. Thank you, Tony, for this sensitive and thoughtful handling of such a hard issue for all of us to face, because that's what you've done here. I'll show you the book again briefly. If you just open it in the middle, he goes back and forth, but he mentions a lot of people's names. Many people who live in London will be very familiar with the people concerned. I've deliberately taken a view that I wasn't going to start mentioning a lot of people's names. Obviously there were failures which are highlighted, but every time you have any form of operation there will be problems. You've got the murder investigations themselves, the people involved in that, the appeals, the acquittals, further investigations, the morale and psychological stress, again on the force. Where does the blame lie? At least some questions have been put forward and so forth. And then finally the conclusion, the real blame for the Broadwater farm riot and therefore Keith's death lies much farther back than in the weeks leading up to the riot. Again, I think it's a great contribution. I'm not going to get into the real detail even in this short review, but you will see that it's been looked at from an intelligence point of view, I can put it that way, so that we look and say, well, we've had that problem, what do we do to make it different next time, so if we can avoid it doesn't happen? Because unfortunately there's always the possibility that we're going to have another type of problem in the future. There are lots of things politicians can do. Let's hope some of them get started quite quickly. Thank you to all concerned, though. It's an important book, one I shall think of for some time to come and reflect upon. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.